Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Clean Tech Pod. My name is Dara Bassi, and at the Clean Tech Pod, we foster a necessary conversation about clean energy and sustainable development. And today's topic is very interesting because we're exploring an exciting and increasingly vital conversation: market intelligence and data-driven insight for energy transition. Across the continent, the clean energy landscape is evolving rapidly, from off-grid solar to e-mobility, renewable energy financing, data and research are driving smarter decisions, better investments, and more inclusive energy policies. But what exactly does market intelligence mean in this context? And how can we harness it to accelerate Africa's energy transition? Joining me today is someone who sits at the heart of these innovations. His name is Mr. Abel Gaiya. He's the Chief Research Officer at Technology Hub. He's deeply involved in generating evidence-based insights that inform energy access, renewable energy policy, and social development in Africa. Mr. Abel, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Welcome. Great to be here, Dara.
Yes. Great. Okay. So to begin, could you help our listeners understand what market intelligence means in the context of clean energy, and why it's becoming such a powerful tool for driving energy transition?
So great first question. Market intelligence is the systematic collection of data, analyzing this data, interpreting this data in order to understand the market dynamics within the particular sector, so covering technologies, policies, consumer behavior, and so on around the renewable energy sector. So just as we have in the security space, security intel to help security operatives make decisions, we have that also in the market space. So in the renewable energy market space, we have the market intelligence to do that, to guide decision makers in the sector. And this is particularly important because the sector is young and it's very dynamic. And so you constantly need intelligence in order to drive decision making and understand what is actually happening and what are the viable alternatives that we can use to power energy transition.
Yeah, that's a very interesting insight to your response. But I would say that one of the issues that we found out working in this sector, people talk about the lack of data, especially granular data and local data around renewable energy in Africa and Nigeria at large. It's a bit difficult to get those data. So in your perspective, working in this sector, what would you say is how would you describe the current state of data availability in Nigeria, especially in the clean energy space? Are we generating any insights to guide the sector, or are we far off from the mark?
So within the clean energy space, things are a little uneven. So you have on the one hand the more mature, it's still young but mature renewable energy technologies like mini grids, solar home systems. These are the most common that you see on the rooftops of homes as you are passing along your city in terms of solar home systems, so rooftop systems. And then in rural areas, peri-urban areas, you have about 250 mini grids across communities. So for these ones that have been deployed largely at scale, you have more information and data about it. So you have the Rural Electrification Agency, for example, that deploys or that runs the largest programs that funds mini grids in Nigeria. It uses a set of tools such as the VIDA, Village Data Analytics, and a few other tools. It previously had a tool developed under the National Electrification Project. And there are also open source data. So Clean Tech Hub, for example, was part of a consortium called PeopleSun, where we developed the largest open source data on the energy use and appliances across Nigeria, about 3,000 or thereabouts respondents. And that is open for anyone to use. It gives you an idea of appliance ownership and all that. And then there are a few open tools. But then this is, as you get to younger subsectors in the e-mobility sector, you don't have that data. We don't know how many electric vehicles are currently on the roads in Nigeria. And even the National Automotive Design and Development Council has tried to get data on importation of electric vehicles from the Nigerian Customs Service, but we still don't have that yet. So we don't know how many is registered and all that. But there are private sector initiatives like Connect Votes that is trying to crowdsource data on charging infrastructure that has been deployed across the country. And then when you get to even newer or more fragmented or decentralized technologies like clean cooking, and so we even have less data. So the space is uneven at the moment, but for the and it's the younger the subsector, the less data we have.
That's very, very fascinating. But I mean, in the work that we do, we engage a lot of stakeholders across the value chain, from government, the financials, and the private sector as well. And in your opinion, in the work you've done over the past couple of years, what is the most important data that all these stakeholders need? Is it around investments, policy change? Is it around policy data? Is it around energy access? Or is it around investment trends? Like, which data are they most interested in, most important for the work they do?
So I think because many of the subsectors are growing, they are either new or growing, and so at this stage, they typically need the interaction of multiple areas of support. So many subsectors emerge, but they don't have regulatory or policy frameworks, and so you need to create those frameworks. But how do you create those frameworks without the data to guide you on what is happening in the sector and what is needed? The technologies, there are multiple technologies that are popping up. So what standards do you use? So you need data on what private sector is actually deploying and what the challenges are in deploying a particular standard or type of technology and so on. The business models, you also need information about that, because at these early stages, many are untested, and so you need to test them. There are pilot projects where you need to gather data from all those pilot projects and proof of concepts. So at this stage, virtually all the types of data touching on the different dynamics of the subsector or industry are equally important. And also the data that allows financiers to pay attention to that sector. So you need information about financing, the financial viability of companies in the sector, so that development partners, donors, investors will know what the risk profile is. There's always high levels of uncertainty, which lead to these investors perceiving such sectors as high risk. So you now need to provide the data, the market intelligence to guide them so that they know precisely what the risk profile is and so on. So all these areas are equally important when it comes to the role of data and market intelligence.
Yeah, right. And can you share an example of where data-driven insights or market intelligence led to a significant policy change, investment decision, or program design in the clean energy sector? So, in a nutshell, when I give an example where data drove change in the energy transition market in Nigeria.
Yeah, so there are many examples of that in the electrification area. So it used to be that we have a vertically integrated electricity market with NEPA and PHCN, and then that was unbundled, privatized. But when it comes to off-grid, so those that are not connected to the national grid, the approach used to be also that we are just expecting the national grid to extend to them eventually. But then we now introduce least cost electrification methods. So taking into account grid extension, solar mini grids, solar home systems as electrification methods for remote communities, communities not connected to the national grid. And then doing what is called least cost electrification modeling to find out of these technologies what for which one or which one has the least costs in terms of electrifying a new community. And so you need data for that. They usually use geospatial methods where you overlay its population data across the country, where population settlements are located, the population densities there, data on where the grid has extended to, so transmission capacity, distribution lines, and so on. So that has been transformative in the sense that giving that role to the Rural Electrification Agency, for example, it is now able to mobilize financing for all three electrification methods, and which is why it has led the largest financing for mini grids in Nigeria. So there are other examples of this, for example, with mesh grids. So mesh grids are a new technology in Nigeria. They've been applied in other global south contexts. And so when Okra Solar, for example, was introducing it in Nigeria, it's not just about introducing technology. You have to show that you have to show the economic figures. And so they collaborated with various technology providers in the mini grid space. The mesh grid technology itself was supposed to solve a problem that neither mini grids nor solar home systems could solve. And so there were pilot projects, everything was documented, the reduced connection costs or reduced capex in electrifying a cluster of households with mesh grids compared to mini grids or solar home systems and so on. And based on this data that was generated, this intelligence that was generated, it ended up being seen as economically viable and then part of the distributed access to renewable energy scale-up projects that the government has is now running with World Bank support. And the last example I can think of right now is the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. It had just developed a draft net billing regulation, and it was net billing rather than net metering because of information and data that they considered when looking at other countries that have applied them, like Brazil, and how the experience was with net metering. And so looking at those experiences, they now thought, okay, in Nigeria's case, net billing would be best, and then drafting the regulation based on that. So yeah, these are a few examples.
Okay, wow. Okay, so I think now let's talk about something very interesting. It's something dear to your heart, which I'm sure. So Christopher recently launched the Nigerian Off-Grid Solar Energy Hub. And I know that has been something you've been heavily involved in. And I know it's meant to centralize data and publications around energy access, climate action, and all that for Nigeria, I think Africa at large, for Nigeria in particular. But could you just walk us through that hub and what the purpose is, and how it contributes to the country's energy ecosystem?
Okay, so the Nigerian Off-Grid Solar Knowledge Hub is domiciled on the Energypedia platform. And this came out from a multi-year project called People's Son. I've previously mentioned it, which developed a range of tools that energy practitioners in Nigeria and Africa would be able to use to plan their projects. And the hub was meant to be a repository and a consolidated platform where you find news, articles, how-to type articles, what is type articles, case studies, webinars, and descriptions of tools that are being used in the sector. So a central platform where you can go to learn everything about the Nigerian renewable energy sector, particularly the solar sector. And that has been a very fruitful exercise because many new practitioners in the sector, for many of them, they are trying to find sources of information that apply specifically to Nigeria or other African countries to learn from. And so if you have this type of central platform to do so, it makes things easier for them, and it goes into detail about the types of tools. So all these open tools that I mentioned, whether it's the People's Son Off-Grid Planner tool or the one we developed under a consortium with Renewable Institute and Greenwork to support rural communities to be able to initiate their own solar mini-grid projects. The descriptions of all those tools are found on the platform. And we're trying to, the next place we are trying to take it is to be a repository of policies, especially as states are now creating their own electricity laws and policies. But if you search on Google, you don't find these things online. You either have to go to the state's Ministry of Energy to get them, or know someone there. So we need these things online. We need their policies that they are publishing to also be in a central repository. So that is what we're working on now.
Okay. I mean, that's very, very important, like you mentioned, and kudos on that. And look forward to exploring that platform and seeing what it becomes in the next couple of years. Yes, but it's one thing to have those open sources, but how do you think these organizations and startups can leverage the open source to improve their business strategies, scale their innovations, and of course attract investments as well in the clean tech space?
Yeah, so because all these subsectors are young, as I previously mentioned, not everyone has the money to buy expensive subscriptions to the more commercial license tools. And so many will tend to rely on open source tools, at least at the beginning of their operations. And open source also allows actors that, in the absence of those tools, would not have been able to engage in that sector. So I mentioned the community mini-grid tool we developed with Renewable Institute and Greenwork, and supported by the International Climate Initiative. And this would help communities, so representatives in communities, so community representatives, and then NGOs operating in communities, whether they are doing their health interventions or infrastructural interventions. They just use the tool. It's an online tool. You put in basic information or data about the community, and then it produces for you a pre-feasibility plan. So you can use that to estimate your community's electricity needs or demand, what's the size of a mini grid you may need to satisfy that demand, how much it would cost to do that, and so on. So rather than the first step being you trying to find a technical person to take that first step in understanding at least the basics. You now have a tool to just feed in information that you already have and then use that as the basis to further discussions with uh, potential project partners. And so for communities, there are tools for young people that are trying to become entrepreneurs and launch startups to deploy renewable energy systems. There are open tools for them to use while they now grow their revenues and are able to get more sophisticated tools to use. And then for government as well, I know that the REA started with an open tool on the NEP website, and then the government, with the support of SC for All, also developed the Nigerian Integrated Energy Planning Tool to also help energy providers, energy service companies to plan their projects, but has now graduated into using a tool like VIDA, which is commercially licensed. So yeah, for everyone, this even for financiers and investors,
Yeah.
for mini grid companies or solar home systems companies that are trying to do financial modeling in order to show investors and for investors themselves to use, there's the financial assessment tool for electrification that we also developed with under the People's Sun project with microenergy and then led by Renal Lemoyne Institute. So this tool is available. It's an Excel-based spreadsheet tool that anyone can use to assess the financial viability and do projections for a renewable energy system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. And I'm very sure for any organization or startup listening, that was very, very good knowledge for them to get on how they can leverage these tools to drive their businesses and grow their businesses and all that. But I guess another aspect that I feel is very important is inclusion, particularly for women and youths. So how can we leverage market intelligence to ensure that we bridge that gap for inclusion, especially around women and around youths?
Yeah, very excellent question. So for the data that is being generated, one important thing is that it is disaggregated. So you are disaggregating the data based on gender, age, region, the rural or urban, based on income levels, low income, high income, and so on. So across all these dimensions, you see the most vulnerable or most marginalized groups that you can then further target your interventions to. So whether you are a financier or development partner that is trying to do that, you have the data to target. Whether you are a government agency, you also have the data to target. And it also helps in, for example, estimating the potential number of jobs that may be needed or that a particular subsector can generate, and then the skills that are needed for those and how they differ by gender, and what is the current skills profile of between men and women or young people and older people that would reflect those skill needs. And so you then target your training interventions and your curricula, your calls for applications based on that data. So the data allows you to disaggregate and then analyze based on the in order to be inclusive in whatever interventions or actions you are taking or decisions you are making in the sector.
That was a very, very good insight, Mr. Abel, our research assistant, research guru. Okay, so moving forward, looking at the future, we've seen the buzzwords around technologies, digital technologies, smarter grids, and of course AI. Everybody's in the room. So looking at all these technologies, mentioned technologies for the future globally. What kind of data capabilities do you think Africa energy institutions need to build for the future?
Uh, Yes, so AI now is becoming more and more of a big thing. And we've also seen this reflecting in the renewable energy sector. And this was why Renan Lemon Institute's Atlas AI, Wascal, and Cleantech Hub had this project funded by Lacuna Fund, where we developed a tool called AI for EA, so AI for energy access, artificial intelligence for energy access, in order to use machine learning to be able to estimate load profiles and electrification or electricity demand at a high level of resolution so that energy planners can also use AI in energy planning. And we launched this tool a few months back, and it was a demonstration of what AI can be used for within the energy access space. So to improve um, the clarity and accuracy of estimates for electricity demand, which then also helps, for example, mini grid developers or solar home systems uh, providers in knowing where exactly the demand is for their services and then targeting those locations precisely, and also reducing the cost of going into the field to conduct these feasibility assessments that are often needed. And we've seen the governments also think of a broader think of smart metering and, for example, including SCADA in the transmission system in order to generate real-time, high-resolution, so at the second level, data on the national grid. And when we talk of renewable energy, hydropower is also a major part of the national grid. And this would help reduce system failures, grid collapses, if you are able to anticipate and also integrate predictive maintenance into that system. So these are the possibilities, but although there are still challenges. So with respect to using AI, for example, a major area is data, because you are training an AI model on real world data so that it learns based on that data and then is able to apply it to other applications. But then when you have a paucity of data, then that limits the accuracy of the model. So for example, with the AI for EA project, this was across 5 West African countries. So Nigeria, Niger, Benin Republic, Togo, and Ghana. But we found out that there is not a lot of open source data available across West Africa. And so we had to use the PeopleSon data that was collected to base that as to use that as the basis for training the model to apply to all 5 countries. And part of the problem is that in many of these countries, there's data collected by either their energy commissions or their ministries of energy or rural electrification agencies, but these are not made public. And there's always this problem of some misinterpret their data protection laws to say that they can't share the data because you're asking them for georeference data, and their data privacy laws are saying that they can't share location-specific data or data that would enable you to identify a person, so it has to be anonymized and so on. And so they interpret that as saying it's impossible to share georeference data. And in other cases, they demand money in order for them to give you that data. So these are the challenges we are facing. We need larger amounts of data in order to train accurate AI models on this. But yeah, this is an intervention or potential project that so we can pursue further across West Africa in general, but also in Nigeria as well.
Okay, excellent. So I can listen to you talk all day, but unfortunately we don't have all day. So just conclude this discussion. I have to ask you. I'm sure there are like policymakers, researchers, um, business owners looking to you speak right now. Um, so, what advice will you give them right now, especially those who are looking how they can use data to accelerate energy transition in Nigeria and Africa at large?
Uh, so I think everyone has now realized the power that data has. Industry associations that are emerging to govern, at least on the private sector side. Many of these subsectors have also realized that, and so part of what they do early on is to launch a state of the industry reports, kind of reports, where they survey many of their members and then generate some data that can be used by policy planners and development partners. But then the advice is that in all these areas, there are many constraints, and the government and development partners need to be more proactive in addressing these constraints. And this happens systematically for every subsector. So I'm not sure why we wait for the constraints to appear and then stay for a long time before they are addressed. And it's the same type of constraints. So development partners, for example, should take more concerted efforts in supporting, for example, electric vehicle agencies responsible for promoting electric vehicles with obtaining the data that they need from the custom service on electric vehicle importation, for example, and say VIO on registered electric vehicles, for example, and then supports efforts that are being undertaken by people trying to crowdfund data as well. And then this issue that I mentioned of poor data sharing, even between government ministries. So, say a Bureau of Statistics has data that is relevant for energy sector, but a rural electrification agency or energy commission that is requesting that data is not being given that data because of bureaucratic constraints or bottlenecks. So there are various problems and challenges, and my recommendation is just for this to be addressed more systematically. So we actually need a maybe central renewable energy intelligence committee or something, or unit or task force or working group that addresses this data problem more systematically rather than reactively or after everybody laments and yeah.
Yeah, it's quite complex. It's quite complex, yes.
Exactly.
But I feel like you've done justice to this conversation since we've been talking. So this has been very, very, very insightful. Mr. Abel.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the excellent question.
Well, I did do my best. All right. On that note, thank you so much, Mr. Abel, for sharing these insightful thoughts. This has, like I mentioned, been has been wonderful, very insightful. I'm sure we've learned a lot. I'm sure if our listeners were listening, they could feel the full notebook with everything you said so far. But it's clear that data and market intelligence are not just technical tools. They are the foundation for a just, inclusive, and sustainable energy future in Africa. That's very, very important. Thank you very much, Mr. Abel, for sharing your thoughtful insights with us today. It's clear from our discussion that data and market intelligence are not just technical tools. They are the foundations for building a just, inclusive, and sustainable energy future in Africa. So on that note, I have to say to our listeners, thank you for joining us on the Clean Tech Pod. If you enjoyed this conversation, please be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us across all our platforms. for more inspiring discussions around clean energy and sustainable development. Until next time, stay informed, stay inspired, and keep the energy clean.